Mr. Joonas Kokkonen was born in November 1921 in the eastern Finnish city of Iisalmi, and he died in October 1996 in the southern Finnish city of Järvenpää, some 37 kilometers or 23 and a half miles north of Helsinki. He was one of the most internationally famous Finnish composers of the 20th century after Jean Sibelius. His opera, The Last Temptations, about the Eastern Finnish lay preacher and peasant Mr. Paavo Ruotsalainen, one of the most famous Finnish revivalist preachers of the early 19th century, has received over 500 performances worldwide and is considered by many to be Finland's most distinguished national opera. He spent most of his life in Järvenpää, which was known, his home over there was known as Villa Kokkonen. He served in the Finnish army during the Second World War with great distinction. He was educated at the University of Helsinki and later at the Sibelius Academy, which is Finland's most prestigious musical educational institution, where he afterwards taught composition. His students there included one of the most famous contemporary, still living Finnish composers, Mr. Aulis Sallinen. In addition to his activities as a composer, he made a significant and powerful impact on Finnish cultural life, serving as a chairman and an organizer, heading organizations such as the Society of Finnish Composers, the Board of the Concert Center, and others. His purpose was always to improve musical education, as well as the status and appreciation of classical music, as well as Finnish music. In the 1960s and 1970s and early 1970s, he won numerous prizes for his work. He was appointed to the prestigious Finnish Academy upon the death of fellow Finnish composer Mr. Uno Klami. His composition activity slowed down greatly after the death of his wife and increased alcohol consumption. He had long planned a fifth symphony but did not live to complete it. Even though he studied at the Sibelius Academy, he was mainly self-learned as a composer. Usually his compositions are divided into three style periods: a neoclassical early style from 1948 to 1958, a relatively short middle period, a 12-tone style from 1959 to 1966, and a late neo-romantic style of free tonality, which also used aspects of his earlier style periods, which began in 1967 and lasted for the rest of his life. Most of his early music is chamber music and includes a piano trio and a piano quintet. The style is contrapuntal and influenced by the early 20th century Hungarian composer Béla Bartók, but looks back to Renaissance and Baroque models as well. In the second style period, he wrote the first two of his four symphonies. Although he used 12-tone technique, he avoided orthodoxy by occasionally using triads and octaves. He also liked to use the row melodically, giving the successive pitches in the same tone color. In the third style period, Kokkonen wrote the music that made him internationally famous. The last two symphonies, the Durch einen Spiegel or Through a Mirror for 12 solo strings, the Requiem, and the opera The Last Temptations, completed in 1975, based on the life and death of the Finnish revivalist lay preacher Mr. Paavo Ruotsalainen. The opera is punctuated with chorales which refer back to the famous early 17th century German Baroque composer Johann Sebastian Bach, and which are also reminiscent of the African-American spirituals used for a similar purpose in Michael Tippett's oratorio, A Child of Our Time. The opera was staged at the Metropolitan Opera in New York in 1983. He was reportedly a Freemason.